What is up, YouTube world? It's Jay Coffee Talk. And first off, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever holiday you may celebrate. I hope you guys are having a great one. But check this out. My moderator, Murder Man, big shout out to him as always, sent me a link to some news. And once again, to anyone out there, if you guys watch my videos, you ever want to hit me up about a story or something like that, you could hit me up on Instagram or Twitter in the DM. Follow me on those platforms as well. But Murder Man shared this news of WWE making some upcoming documentaries in 2021 of a few different wrestlers. And one of them caught my eye and inspired me to make this video. It's a very sad story of wrestling. We're talking about Lex Luger. And even if you guys are not professional wrestling fans, I'm sure you may know that there is a lot of very, very tragic, sad stories coming out of the professional wrestling world. A lot of people say, oh, wrestling's fake, whatever. These guys maybe are going out there and putting on a show, but the contact is all real. And, many injuries, serious injuries plague these guys. It's very physically demanding. They're on the road all the time. They literally live like a rock and roll lifestyle, a lot of these guys, on the road, not a lot of sleep, traveling all over away from their families. And with that comes a lot of partying and, other things like that as well. But I'm sure everyone, is well aware of who Lex Luger is. One of the bigger stars over the late 80s, late 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Maybe didn't get to the top spot, but he was always up there. But let's check out Lex, currently, nowadays.
With me is Lawrence Foal, Larry Foal, a.k.a. better known as Lex Luger, the World Wrestling Champion. We'll get into a lot of people don't know this, but Lex Luger, his stage name, is Lawrence Foal, and you are a Buffalo boy, born and raised, and you still live here now, right?
Yeah, back here with Mom. I moved away for a while, but I'm back in Buffalo. I'm loving it.
Tell everybody at home where you grew up. I know it was right around here.
I grew up in Waynesville, Amherst area, graduated high school from Orchard Park, and I got my Bills gear on. They had their 60th birthday. I just turned 61, so we're like almost born together. I'm a huge Bills fan, Sabres fan. I grew up in one of the things I love about Buffalo, before I get to, but I love the food, the sports. I mean, I grew up in the era with the Sabres, the French Connection, Gilbert Perrault and the French Connection, the Buffalo Braves, Niagara, St. Bonaventure, Canisius. They were like on
this
top.
This is a true Buffalo,
Bob
Western New
Lanier,
York
Kelvin
guy,
Murphy.
So there you see Lex Luger from Buffalo, New York. For anyone who watches this channel knows, I'm from Buffalo, New York, and Bills Mafia, which you heard Lex say he is as well. You heard him talking about the Buffalo Braves. That stuff people from Buffalo would be more interested in. But you heard what he said. He's back home in Buffalo, living with his mom. Lost his physique, weighs about 140 pounds, and he was a bodybuilder before, billed as the total package. Now you see him weighing $140, living at home, and in and out of a wheelchair, doesn't even have full use of his body. It's like very sad. How did this all happen? So let's break it all down. Lex Luger at one point in time in his wrestling career was known as the narcissist. And a lot of people, if you watch interviews and things like that, who've known Lex Luger in the wrestling business have kind of said that was almost a mirror of the real Lex Luger when he was in his prime. He was very narcissistic, all about himself, and quite honestly, basically kind of sounded like a jerk. In that little clip that I just played, you heard him say, talking about sports and everything, and coming up, Lex Luger, I was an athlete, played high school football, played basketball, everything, but football was the sport that he really excelled at, and ended up getting a scholarship to Penn State University. That didn't work out. and transferred to the U, Miami. 2 Division I colleges. And at the U, things didn't really work out either. Lex was kind of his own worst enemy, as he had an altercation, fight with the legendary coach Lou Saban, and ended up trashing a motel room when they were on the road. And he, ended up going undrafted, kind of being labeled and known as a problematic guy. Like I was just saying, kind of a jerk, an arrogant person. So we went on to play in the CFL for Montreal, Edmonton, ended up playing for the Green Bay Packers, but didn't actually make the team, was fighting for a roster spot, and then played a little bit in the USFL before moving on, to getting in the wrestling world, where, like I mentioned earlier in this video, was always working with the top guys that were in the business in the late 80s. He worked with Ric Flair, at one point was a member of the Four Horsemen, won the NWA World Heavyweight title, and then came over to the now known as WWE, back then WWF, where I'm sure a lot of people remember Lex Luger at one point in time was kind of almost being put in position to be the new Hulk Hogan when Hulk Hogan had left WWE for WCW. Being the All-American, made in the USA, body slamming Yokozuna at a pay-per-view event. And they ran a whole campaign where Lex Luger was gonna, take on Yokozuna at WrestleMania. And everyone thought, become the new champion, become that new All-American Hulk Hogan type character. But he ended up just beating Yokozuna by count out. Bret Hart ended up beating Yokozuna later in this, same event and becoming the world champ. And like I was saying, he always kind of was at the top, but not quite the top guy, as that whole, making him the new top guy of the company that they were trying to do didn't end up working out. And there was also word that there were a lot of guys in the locker room that didn't want him to be the world champ. Like I've said, a lot of people said he really was this narcissistic guy, and then he ended up going on to WCW, where a lot of people know him. And, the head of WCW back then, Eric Bischoff, didn't even really originally want to sign him. He was just doing a favor to another wrestling legend, Sting, who was a friend of Lex Luger. But he went on, to be involved in a lot of great storylines there as well, tag teaming with Sting, fighting against the NWO, possibly the biggest storyline ever in wrestling. Later joining a newer version of the NWO, which I thought was a stupid storyline, honestly. But after WCW shut down, he worked for TNA a little bit in some independent promotions and things like that. But let's get into where things got very tragic, sad.
Well, that was, I had living the double life, which we did in the lead-in. I was making a lot of bad choices. The universal principle, we reap what we sow.
Right.
And eventually our sins shall come find us, Numbers 32, verse 23.
That's what it said.
And it all came raining down on me. I had a mistress. I was leading a double life, and unfortunately and tragically, her name was Miss Elizabeth. She died of a drug overdose in my arms at a secret townhouse I had.
But they blamed
separate
you.
from my family.
They thought you'd killed her.
They did, based on my lifestyle at the time and everything. They looked into it. That wasn't the case, but at first, they had everything everybody thought, that I had played a role. But indirectly, I did, But talk about we reap what we sow. I was leading a lifestyle, making so many bad decisions with drugs, alcohol. Did I make her take drugs and alcohol? But no, we have an influence on those around us.
Of course we do.
And that influence, I feel, definitely played a role in her death, no doubt. So I do have some responsibility.
Well, you went to prison, and then they put you on parole, and then they got you for parole violation. What did you do?
Well, I just wasn't listening.
Yeah?
I thought I didn't have accountability to anyone at that point in my life. And I thought I had a sense of entitlement, so I didn't have to obey all the rules. And I kept on getting locked back up for my drug charges I was convicted of. And until it was the point where finally one last time I was in jail and I met a jail chaplain that changed my life forever.
So you heard what Lex was talking about there. A lot of fans theorize or believe that Lex Luger is responsible for Miss Elizabeth's death. This was at the late stages in his wrestling career. Pretty much it was all over. But yes, this is Miss Elizabeth, formerly married to the Macho Man. And you heard what Lex was talking about. He was living a double life. Miss Elizabeth was his mistress. He had a secret home with her. He was abusing drugs. And when the police came over to the house, they ended up finding, her cause of death was mixing alcohol, Xanax, and hydrocodone. And when the police came over there, they believed Lex had something to do with this, as she and him had an incident before where he was arrested for domestic violence, where not long before this, I want to say just a few weeks or a month prior, was the domestic incident. And then on this day, they come there after he calls 911. She's dead. And then when they searched the house, they found drugs, painkillers, steroids, HGH, human growth hormone, testosterone, all kinds of stuff. He got hit with like 19 charges, bunch of felonies, and they believed he was responsible for her death, but in the end it was ruled to be accidental. But there's still a lot of people to this day that feel that there was maybe something a little more going on there. You guys can hit the comments with your thoughts on all that. But, Lex had got into a lot of the dark stuff that a lot of these wrestlers do. Like I was mentioning earlier in the video, this rock and roll type lifestyle, drugs, having affairs because they're on the road away from their family all the time. Like Lex Luger was married with kids. But all in all, when it was all said and done, he ended up getting off with a $10,000 fine and 5 years probation. But a couple years into being on probation, in 2005, he got arrested on an airplane with one of his running mates that he was always on the road with, Buff Bagwell, another wrestler, that has a lot of well-documented struggles with drugs and, all kinds of issues and stories. But him, Lex, Buff Bagwell, and another wrestler were on a plane going to travel out of the country because he was still working. They were wilding out, drunk on the plane, and creating a disturbance or whatever. So they had air marshals come on, detain them. Buff and the other guy ended up being able to travel, I guess given a warning or maybe a ticket or something like that. But Lex was arrested for violating probation, as he was not cleared with permission to leave the country. He was hoping to just, fly under the radar, so to speak, and go do his thing and come back home before the probation officers knew.
Wrestling or something else?
It was a result of my wrestling and football career cumulatively over the years. And I was still training real heavy on the weights. I injured my spinal cord at C5, C6, and they said I was going to be paralyzed from the neck down.
Weights?
Yeah, working out. And I sat in an airplane, my head turned, and I cut the blood flow off to my central spinal cord up in my neck area. And I woke up the next morning in a hotel room paralyzed from neck down. And thankfully, the way the story goes, I had been saved for a year and a half, and God comforted me in that room because I was there, was panicking, I couldn't breathe, and God relaxed me and comforted me. And even in that journey, we talk about it as, it's all be a bed of roses as a believer, but there's thorns on sometimes too. And the wind blows and rains on us all, even as believers. And it's not that bad stuff might not happen to us, but now God, you have God in your life to lead you through and walk you through it.
So ironically enough, like you heard there, he was arrested on the airplane for violating probation. And then a couple years later, after he was saved and had his faith, an injury in his neck that had just mounted up over the years, ended up becoming agitated on a flight. He just fell asleep funny and had his neck a certain way, and there was a spinal impingement, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, where just the blood flow was cut off and not going to his neck and his spinal cord, and he was temporarily paralyzed, had some surgeries, some complications where there was infections and everything, but he ended up paralyzed. And over the years, things have gotten a little better for Lex Luger, but still, at the end of the day, you know, it's a very sad story. Like I said, Lex went from being this football star, wrestling superstar, all that success, but getting involved in that dark side of the ring, like I was talking about, with drugs and having an affair and being arrested, Miss Elizabeth dying, and all these different things, and then in a wheelchair, 140 pounds, and now back at home in Buffalo with his family, which is, it's not a bad thing, you know. He seems to be in a good place with this faith, and now has this job with WWE where he helps with their wellness policy and talks to the younger wrestlers about staying healthy and staying away from that dark side of the ring. But all in all, just a very, very tragic story that, you know, when I saw this they were making this documentary, I wanted to share this with you guys and talk with you guys and get your take and opinion on this whole story. So please tap in them comments. Let's talk about this. Also, guys, let me know if you enjoyed this kind of content. Before, I've stated that I wanted to do some videos about pro wrestling and crime stories and different things like that. So let me know if you guys enjoyed this content. New viewers, make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell. We talk a lot of different topics on this channel: music, news, sports, much, much more. Once again, I hope you guys are having a great holidays. And that's about all I got. One last thing, though. A lot of people think that the movie The Wrestler is actually based somewhat on Lex Luger or inspired by him. Some people say Jake the Snake Roberts. Who knows? But good movie. But that's all I got, guys. I'll catch you on the next one.
The leanest, biggest guy out there. He was the total package. And for me to see the total package in a wheelchair, it rests my heart out because I love him so much. But with his Christianity walk that he's doing, and I'm proud of him that he's able to do that. He's done more than I was able to do. I've cried more about my position that happened to me than Lex has cried about his position being in a wheelchair. And that's pathetic. So I'm calling my own self out. I mean, really, that's sad. But Lex is just a triumphant of a man. He's so strong, powerful. Hate his position he's in. Wish he missed the days of working out with him in the gym and all that. But we're still very close. He's a great, great, great guy. And I'll never regret or take 1 minute back from the time we had together. And I love him